Stick this in your ear.
The number one internet shock radio network.
Shock me with that deviant behavior.
Renegade Talk Radio.
A very important message from Dr. Rima Libo. Trump must tackle the UN's plan for global genocide. See the whole thing at band.video.
Trump has appointed an entire slate of globalist henchmen, one after another, from his chief of staff to the appointees that he's chosen to his vice president, who is Peter Thiel's business partner. And if you're looking for a globalist, you'll find one in Peter Thiel. However, every single campaign promise rests on our not being part of the United Nations in order to fulfill that promise. Gender mutilation, or you can fill in the blank and talk about digital currency or any of the issues that people are quite rightly concerned about. These hordes of people flooding across borders around the world are in fact doing what the United Nations wants them to do, which is destroy the national integrity of each and every country anywhere in the world. When we remove our countries from the United Nations, we automatically are removed from the World Health Organization, UNESCO, UNICEF, the International Monetary Fund, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If a country, a sovereign country, and a non-country organization conclude a relationship, it's called a contract. And the country is under no obligation to change its laws to meet the contract. So that's a very, very significant difference. There can be no treaties with the United Nations because it's not a sovereign state. It's an unelected nobody's club. Leaving the United Nations is embarrassingly simple. It takes a letter from the head of state to the Secretary General of the United Nations, and the letter says, we're not part of your club anymore, goodbye. That's all it takes. Now, I emphasize it has to be signed by the head of state. In Trump's first term in office, he allegedly removed us from the World Health Organization. He did not. That was twinkle toes nonsense, flim flam. He directed Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, to write the withdrawal letter. In other words, it was a political theatrical stunt. Trump then took twice the annual contribution that the United States makes to the World Health, which should be called World Holocaust Organization, and he gave it to Gavi, which is one of the principal supporters of the World Health Organization. Where do you think double the money went? In the Senate, Mike Lee from Utah, and in the House of Representatives, Chip Roy of Texas and Mike Rogers of Alabama introduced identical legislation, which collectively was called, listen to the words, the Disengaging Entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act. That act required every unit of the United Nations, its headquarters, its peacekeepers, its organizations, its whatever, out of the United States, and the United States out of the United Nations. We have the power now, and we presumably still have the opportunity to inform our leaders that they must do what we say at this juncture. If we do not do this, and the plan of the globalist destructocrats and the controligarchs comes to fruition, people have to understand that is literally the end of humanity. Our DNA will be destroyed for their biodigital convergence enslavement purposes, and the species known as human will cease to exist. That is the explicit articulated plan.
Learn more at preventgenocide2030.org. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
All right, folks, that's the latest from Greg Reese. Find and share it at Infowars.com and band.video. Disengaging entirely from the United Nations debacle. Again, share that report probably on X as well. It's a great place to share it. I'm back after a little under a week of vacation, ready to hit the ground running. I'm excited. Crazy things are happening. Stay tuned.
It's Monday, December 2nd, in the year of our Lord 2024. And you're listening to the American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith. Watch it live right now at band.video.
I think it's time to blow this thing.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the American Journal. I'm your host, Harrison Smith, coming to you live this Monday morning. It is the 2nd of December. Already, if you can believe it. We're in the final month of the year, and how time flies. Big thanks to Maria Z for sitting in for me Tuesday and Wednesday of last week. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I know I did. Good. It was good to disconnect for a little while. I was just watching Alex's Sunday broadcast, and he's like totally overwhelmed, like 10 times. He kept being like, maybe I should just take a vacation. Maybe I just need to take a vacation. Sometimes that's what you need. I woke up at 4 in the morning today, a full hour before my alarms went off, and just laid in bed for like 10 minutes and was like, all right, I guess I'm up. I guess I'm up and rearing to go. After not talking about this stuff for a week, you get the itch. So we're going to satisfy that today. Tons of stuff to talk about. Obviously, we've got what's going on in Syria as another, a continual front of the Third World War, but one that hasn't seen a lot of action until just a few days ago. Syrian rebels stormed Aleppo. We'll talk about how that plays into the Ukraine war, the wider World War III conflict. We'll also, of course, talk about Hunter Biden's pardon by Joe Biden. We'll take a good long look at Kash Patel, as it seems to be one of the most meaningful appointments Trump has made so far, to be the director of the FBI. And it's a name that I recognize. He's been around for a while. He's been in the news for a long time. Not an unknown quantity. But I really hadn't looked into him very deeply until he was appointed as FBI director. And I like what I see. All of the worst people are against him. So he's got that going for him. But also some not great people are for him. And I'm a little bit confused by that. But I've got like 15 videos of him talking about what he wants to do if he was in charge of the FBI. And basically it's just declassify everything and go after all of the corrupt actors that have systematically destroyed our civil rights in this country. It's an exciting thing. But again, how Trump does it, I don't know if it's a strategy. I don't know if it's some sort of ploy he's doing. But it's like every good appointment comes with a bad appointment. Every bad appointment comes with a good appointment. He does them in pairs. You're going to be happy about one and not so happy about another. And we'll talk about some of the other appointments Trump has made that we're not so thrilled about. We're also going to be talking about UFOs a little bit. It could be tomorrow that the prophecy has foretold there will be a battle in the sky between UFOs and human technology. We'll talk about that as well. It's another thing that's just been sort of quietly simmering in the background. I'm sure everybody's noticed just a distinct uptick in the amount of reports of, they call them UAPs now, it's just UFO. Unidentified aerial phenomenon, unidentified flying object. I guess they just decided UFO was too old school, was too like 1950s. So they just changed the initialism around. But UFOs. We'll talk about UFOs too, because there has been a lot of them. And it's the type of thing where it's like, all right, I'm not going to spend time reporting this, just like lights in the sky. But if there's lights in the sky every day for a week, all right, maybe there's something to talk about here. Now, whether it's actual UFOs, I don't think so, or the revelation of advanced technology, or just a big psyop to convince us that globalism is the answer. We'll figure it out. We'll get into it. We'll take your calls. I just have a ton of videos to get to today. Like I said, I woke up at 4 a.m., which is good for you, the audience, because it means I've got a ton of stuff to show you, but also means the crew is struggling. Well, let's just get into it. We'll begin today, as we do every day, with our Daily Dispatch. All right, here it is, folks, your Daily Dispatch for Monday, the 2nd of of December 2024. Biden pardons his son Hunter weeks before Trump takes office. Biden issues a full and unconditional pardon of his son Hunter Biden. The pardon comes weeks before President Biden leaves office and transfers power to President-elect Donald J. Trump, who spent years attacking Hunter Biden over his legal and personal issues. President Biden issued a full and unconditional pardon of his son Hunter on Sunday night after repeatedly insisting he would not do so, using the power of his office to wade aside years of legal troubles, including a federal conviction for illegally buying a gun and for tax evasion. A couple things about this. For one, I don't think anybody should be surprised. I think it's one of the things you do as president. If your son is a relentless criminal, you're gonna pardon him. Like that's not surprising, really. I saw somebody on Twitter going, "Yeah, this is the first honorable thing Biden's ever done. You should put family first. You should take advantage of your privileges as president of the United States to look after your own." All I'm saying is I'd probably do it too. I don't exactly blame Biden for this. The interesting part of it is the breadth and scope of this pardon, going all the way back to 2014, just around the time that the United States government overthrew the government of Ukraine, and Mr. Biden and his son Hunter got involved in business there. So we'll look into that, and we've got some pretty powerful statements from the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene and others about why the time frame was so broad in this particular case. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's appointment of Kash Patel to the FBI director fuels speculation about Bureau's future. President-elect Donald Trump's choice of Kash Patel to lead the FBI has ignited a confirmation battle that will likely be as much of a fight over the future of America's premier national law enforcement agency as over the candidate's qualifications. Many Republicans have lined up behind Mr. Patel, who said he wants to dismantle the deep state within the FBI. Democrats say he's too much of a Trump loyalist and unqualified for the position. Well, he certainly isn't unqualified for the position. And the likes of Ted Cruz have said that he certainly has the votes and will likely be confirmed in that role. And if that's the case, oh boy. And we'll show you clips of Kash Patel over the years talking about what needs to be done at the FBI. And in a word, he's an extremist in the matter. At least that's what he comes across as, and we'll look into that. Meanwhile, Trump threatens 100% tariff on the BRIC bloc of nations if they act to undermine the U.S. dollar. President-elect Donald Trump on Saturday threatened 100% tariffs against a bloc of 9 nations if they act to undermine the U.S. dollar. His threat was directed at countries in the so-called BRIC alliance, which consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Malaysia have applied to become members, and several other countries have expressed interest in joining. And this is a very hardline stance from Trump. In a Truth Social post, he wrote, "We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty U.S. dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs and should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful U.S. economy." So Trump already just making massive moves. It practically is like he's president already. He's summoning world leaders to bend the knee and kiss the ring at Mar-a-Lago, like Justin Trudeau, who joined him over the weekend and agreed to ramp up border security in between Canada and America. He's also helping to cobble together peace summits. We've got a lot of news on that front as well when it comes to Ukraine. But he's already doing a lot, and this move against BRICS is very, it's so big, I can't even comprehend what the consequences of this will be, but we'll look into what the experts are saying and see if we can't figure out what the play is here. Meanwhile, U.S. presence in Syria is behind the resurrection of terror, resurgence of terror. Israel is the biggest beneficiary of insecurity, according to Iran. So the story just has to do with the sudden and overwhelming Turkish blitzkrieg against Syria. Iran's foreign ministry says lingering and illegal American military presence in Syria is the main reason behind the persistence of terrorism in the Arab country, describing the Israeli regime as the main beneficiary of regional insecurity. I think that's a fairly accurate reading of the situation, and we'll get into what could be behind this. Obviously, it has to do with Russia, has to do with their Syrian naval port, one of just a few warm weather ports that they rely on during the winter months. Really should reject power over the world. I think it also has to do with the ceasefire with Hezbollah that Israel recently agreed to. I think it's all tied in together, and it's all just part of what future historians will call World War III. It's already on, folks, even if we refuse to acknowledge it. Finally, we have this. Georgia PM accuses EU of launching color revolution after riots erupt in the wake of election. This from Jamie White at Infowars.com. Everyone who respects the principle of democracy must accept the will of the Georgian people, says Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze or something. Pro-EU protests intensified over the weekend in response to anti-Western party taking power in the election, which was viewed as a referendum on the country's aspirations to join the European Union. And yes, folks, if you're having flashbacks to 2014 and exactly the same thing that happened in Ukraine, well, you're not mistaken. It is exactly the same thing that happened in Ukraine. Pray for the people of Georgia. So that's your daily dispatch. We will touch on all of those stories and how they intertwine a little bit later. I do want to tell you that today is Cyber Monday, and the Cyber Week promotional sales are on at Infowars.com and the AlexJonesStore.com. You're getting 25% off store-wide. You can also get 3 shirts or hats for $60. You can mix and match them any way you like. 2 hats and a shirt, 2 shirts and a hat, 3 shirts, whatever you want. The incredible designs at the AlexJonesStore.com are all 3 for $60 with hats and shirts. You can also get the Ultimate Supplement Bundle, which is 30% off for one of every supplement sold in the stores. This is just fill your basket with every supplement on sale at thealexjonesstore.com. You get them all at a massive 30% off. That's the Ultimate CMOS capsules, the Ultimate Hydroforce Gut Cleanse Probiotic, the Iron Plus Vitamin Z, vitamin C, that is. There is no vitamin Z. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Ultimate Turmeric, Ultimate Energy Gummies, Ultimate Sleep Gummies, and Ultimate Sambucus, that's elderberry supplement. Plus, you get free money to spend on the store with no minimum spend if you're a part of the VIP club. I guess that's whether you're a part of the VIP club or not. You're either getting $20 or $10, depending on if you're VIP, and you can get $30 to $50 gifts in every order for VIP members, including shirts, hats, supplements, posters, or more. So if you sign up for the VIP club, not only are you getting access to things like the tapes, the lost tapes, the only place on the internet where you can find them, the InfoWars collection from 2001 to 2008. You're also getting member credits. That's $40 of free store credits every month with your membership. You're getting an additional discount, 10 to 40% off everything in the store, 24/7, 365 days a year. Automatic double entries into all giveaways. And on top of all of that, you get a free gift worth $30 to $50 in every order that you make. So if you are a VIP club member, now is the time to spend that store credit, and you get a $30 to $50 gift. So whatever you order, you'll get an additional shirt or hat or supplement or poster or something else on offer at thealexjonesstore.com. And of course, you keep us on the air and in the fight, as once again, and I know this keeps happening, but I swear we're just trying to get through this. Once again, this may be the last week that we're on air, considering the fact that on the 9th of December, there will be another hearing, and we'll know our fate more fully then. So who knows? Who knows? It could be another example of a time where we come right to the brink of destruction, only to survive for another month or so, or it could be the end. We just don't know. And again, that's because of the insane legal process they've been putting us through for the last several years, and that we would not have survived if not for your support, and that we will not survive without your support. So please do go to thealexjonesstore.com to keep us on the air at InfoWars, or to help us build the escape pod should the worst come to pass. I got so many videos. I got so many videos about Kash Patel. I got so many videos about Syria and Georgia and Russia. I don't even know where to start. But I think I'll begin with somebody that we've played quite a bit because he's an expert in geopolitical affairs. It's Jeffrey Sachs. We showed many examples of his wisdom when it comes to the reality of geopolitical conflicts, mostly having to do with Ukraine and Russia. In this case, he was on Meet the Press or one of these other Sunday shows talking about the fact that everything going on in Syria, and that has been going on in Syria for the last, 10 years at this point. I remember reading stories about this years before I ever worked in InfoWars. The same conflict is still ongoing, and it is the same proxy war between Russia, Syria, Iran, and Israel and the United States. And all of that has to do with the ambitions of the globalists trying to destroy sovereign nations and bring about a one-world government. Let's go down to clip number 10. This is Jeffrey Sachs talking about how all of this conflict and chaos and misery and strife and terrorism is a consequence of America's attempt to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Let's watch.
How out of control this could escalate.
It's true, but I think we have to step back and not put this in partisan terms. This is a U.S. mistake that started 7 years ago. And I remember the day on your show when President Obama said, Assad must go. And I looked at you and Joe and I said, how's he going to do that? Where's the policy for that?
Right. And
we know they sent in the CIA to overthrow Assad. The CIA and Saudi Arabia together in covert operations tried to overthrow Assad. It was a disaster. Eventually it brought in both ISIS as a splinter group to the jihadists that went in. It also brought in Russia. So we have been digging deeper and deeper and deeper. What we should do now is get out and not continue to throw missiles, not have a confrontation with Russia. 7 years has been a disaster under Obama, continuing under Trump. This is what I would call the permanent state. This is the CIA, this is Pentagon, wanting to keep Iran and Russia out of Syria, but no way to do that. And so we have made a proxy war in Syria. It's killed 500,000 people, displaced 10 million. And I'll say predictably so, because I predicted it 7 years ago that there was no way to do this and that it would make a complete chaos. So what I would plead to President Trump is get out. Like his instinct told him, by the way. That was his instinct. But then all the establishment, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Pentagon, everybody said, no, that's irresponsible. But his instinct is right. Get out. We've done enough damage, 7 years. And now we really risk a confrontation with Russia that is extraordinarily dangerous, reckless.
So, you know, what's interesting is that video, when was that from? 2018? I was going to say, it was during the Trump presidency. And of course, he did keep us out of expanded war in Syria. He actually had to fire some of his, head generals and, Defense Department heads because they refused to withdraw from Syria. He gave the order. They refused. He had to fire them and bring in somebody who would actually do what he says. And for that reason, and that reason alone, probably speculation, but you have to think that without Trump's intervention, I mean, if Trump had lost in 2016, Hillary Clinton's plan was a no-fly zone over Syria. So that only means one of two things: either direct confrontation with Russia, since it was Russian planes bombing the quote-unquote Syrian rebels, the AKA Syrian-backed. They're ISIS. It's ISIS. It's CIA-backed, Israeli-backed terrorists flown from Europe and Saudi Arabia and everywhere else. They're foreigners. It's not Syrians doing this fighting. It's foreign factions, in this case, out of Turkey. Regardless, without Trump, calling for the drawdown, removing troops, and actually targeting ISIS, it would have been over. And with Hillary Clinton imposing a no-fly zone, either would have had to shoot down Russian jets, which would have been direct confrontation with Russia and total World War III. But if Russia decided to abide by the no-fly zone, that would have been total freedom of movement for ISIS, a.k.a. the Syrian rebels, which would have given them a massive advantage, an overwhelming advantage, and they probably would have overthrown Assad, and that country would be in misery and chaos right now. So thank God Trump did the right thing the first time around, and we're looking to him to do the right thing again. But all of this, of course, is just part of World War III. The Guardian put out this graphic, World Spirals Towards World War III, just pointing out just a few of the happenings around the world. Putin has lowered the threshold for using nukes after Ukraine launched U.S.-made missiles into Russia. Israel-Iran tensions are sky high as the IDF batters Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran has increased stockpiles of enriched uranium to more than 32 times the limit in the 2015 nuclear deal. China is increasing nuclear stockpiles, threatening Taiwan and laying claim to disputed South China Sea islands. North Korea, meanwhile, has sent troops to fight in Ukraine and signed a defense pact with Russia and boosted nuke production. All of this happening at once. And again, I genuinely think that when historians look back, I mean, they might say World War III started 10 years ago with the first sort of attempts to overthrow Assad, as I think that's where the greater conflict between Russia and America really first came to a head. From Iran's foreign ministry, they say lingering and illegal American military presence in Syria is the main reason behind the persistence of terrorism in the Arab country, describing the Israeli regime as the main beneficiary of regional insecurity. And this is sort of my reading of it. Israel totally failed in Lebanon, just like we told you that they would. In fact, almost exactly like we kept telling you would happen, especially the time frame that we laid out, as well as our Middle East correspondent, Lebanon John, calling in and talking about the fact that you can't really wage war in Lebanon during the winter. It makes it incredibly difficult. So it's like you have to try to invade in the fall at the very latest. They really pushed it to the sort of the final time that they could, the final hour that they could actually do it. They failed. They're repeatedly pushed back. Now there's a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel. And it seems to me like they figured out that if they wanted any chance at all on getting rid of Hezbollah, they have to stop it being resupplied through Syria. So until you deal with Assad in Syria, you'll never be able to deal with Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is an existential threat to Israel. It's funny because I laid this out on X and people were like, what the hell, man? You've turned. I thought you were anti-war. It's like, I'm just explaining the reasoning here. This is a strategic analysis, strategic overview. See, Israel has to defeat Hezbollah because the people in Israel, there's hundreds of thousands or just over 100,000 internal refugees from the north of Israel who are telling their government, we are not returning if there's any threat of bombs. They are not returning to the north of Israel. The whole north of Israel has been basically depopulated except for military installations for the last year, and they can't go on like that forever. They can't continually support 100,000 internal refugees not producing anything while the whole north of their country is depopulated. They have to get those people back. Those people aren't going back until Hezbollah is defeated. They can't defeat Hezbollah while it's being supplied from Syria. So first things first, take out Syria. Then you've got ISIS attacking Hezbollah from the north. Israel can attack from the south. They do a ceasefire to get all that done so they can relaunch the attack once Assad has been taken out. That's my interpretation of what's going on here. I think America is very deeply intertwined. Of course, it also has to do with the Russian warm water port. And they, I think, are trying to get Russia to attack Turkey because Turkey's in NATO, and that would invoke Article 5 without even having to worry about the attacks on Ukraine. It's complicated, but not really.
Now, the one thing I want you to do, if I could ask you to do anything for America and Alex and this network and this crew, the one thing I would ask you to do, go to thealexjonesstore.com right now and sign up for Alex Jones VIP Club. It's $30 a month, but you get $40 in store credit. So if you're going to buy a $35 shirt, you might as well sign up for the VIP Club so that you can get that extra $10 and just get the shirt that you want. That is going to ensure that we can fund this operation, fund the next operation, and ensure that Alex always has a voice. They can try to steal his identity. They can try to steal his business. They can try to steal America. They can try to sacrifice humanity in nuclear genocide. But if you go to thealexjonesstore.com and sign up for Alex Jones VIP Club, they'll never take away our voice. They'll never take away our freedom. They'll never take away free speech, and we can save America together. Please go now and be the reason Alex Jones will always be on the air.
Infowars.com is tomorrow's news today.
You're listening to The American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is The American Journal. I think we'll get back to World War III topics later in the next hour. I'll take your calls. Probably starting about halfway through the show, midway through the second hour. But I want to talk about some of Trump's appointments. As I've said before, it seems like, and I don't know if it's a strategy, if it's on purpose, if it's just a coincidence, it seems like every one of his really good appointments comes with really bad appointments. It's very odd how it works out. In this case, you've got Kash Patel, which I think is a very strong appointment, especially considering how he strikes fear into the heart of the worst people. But at the same time, he puts forward Chad Chronister, who is not good at all, really. And we'll talk about some of the stances he's taken recently. I guess he is he's going to be heading the DEA. For the most part, it seems like the real good appointments are going into the real powerful positions. Then it's always paired with a not very good appointment in some lower position. Again, I don't know if this is deal making, all part of negotiations, or if he's getting bad intel about certain people. I really don't know. But people have been posting videos of Kash Patel constantly. I have like 10 of them, at least 15 videos of this. And so I just want to go to some of these just to give you an idea of at least how this guy presents himself. We'll have to see how he acts once he's in office. And I tend to think that things like the FBI and the CIA, like we know the CIA has shadow directors, has people that are not officially in charge of the CIA, but do in fact make the decisions. It's been that way since at least the 60s. We've read the Eagle 2 document, talked about it ad nauseum on air. And one of the interesting things about this document that was written by the FBI about the CIA is they're very open about the fact that at the time, this person was the director of CIA, but the person actually running things was Alan Dulles, who had been retired for 10 years, but was still the godfather of the CIA, and everything that happened had to go through him first and foremost. So that's the way the deep state operates. That's the way these kind of higher level law enforcement agencies operate. But at the same time, the position of FBI director is very real, and it does have very real powers. And while strings may be pulled at levels above the FBI director has certain capabilities that can devastate deep state, in particular declassification. And that seems to be Kash Patel's like main driver. And he talks about it all the time. In fact, let's go to clip number 12 here. This is Kash Patel saying not only does he want to declassify the JFK files and the 9/11 files and everything else that we know they have but haven't seen, but have a pretty good idea of what's included. He wants a 24/7 declassification office continually declassifying documents about everything in American politics. So let's go now to clip number 12. Here's Kash Patel.
Anyway, the other thing that I put in the book that I recommended the boss to do hits on this. We need a 24/7 declassification office.
Yes. Rolling papers out 24/7. And not just like JFK and not just 9/11. You're talking to the guy that's read the whole 9/11 report and those 7 pages that people talk about. But I believe, as like the guy who is an intel guy who believes wholeheartedly in the classified system of information, I believe that it has been over-abused by these corrupt officials in government to hide the truth and enact more corrupt activities. So what I told the boss was like, I don't care what you call it, truth and reconciliation, whatever, come up with a better name. But every agency and department literally submits all of their documentation. And I believe you could get half out. Half. I still think the other half needs to remain classified. I'll always argue that it does serve a purpose. But like you're seeing in these documents in the Jack Smith case, they're just redacting stuff that they lied about, that they broke the law.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's used to protect themselves.
And it's a public document in federal court, which is a document for the people of the United States. And we can have you run that office. You can come in and just be like, hey, I want all the Saudi documents.
I'll gladly do that. I'd be so happy.
So Luke will be the press secretary for the Libertarian Party.
The declassifying
the
documenter.
Viceroy of declassification.
Absolutely. I like that.
There you go.
I'm in. You got. Where do I sign up?
Yeah. But I think that's how you earn the respect. Like you said, Donald Trump started talking about these things. Then we started putting these documents out there. And remember when I ran Russiagate, right? They came after me and said, if you put out the Nunes memo and you put this out that you wrote, our enemies and our allies are going to get murdered. No one died.
That's it. That's the excuse they always use, right? National security. National security. You can't tell everybody what unrepentant criminals we are because national security. I think it's happening. And, he says this phrase. He said it in that clip, and he says it in this next one, that, I don't know, it's about as far as you can go, I guess, without, violating NDAs, violating classification laws about things like the JFK file or the 9/11 file, where he always has this phrase where he's like, you're talking to the guy who's read the whole thing. He won't tell you anything. He won't say anything. He won't, expand from there. But clearly he's hinting at something. Let's go quickly to clip number 13. Here's him again saying this the same thing. And in this case, in response to, I believe it's Glenn Beck, saying he never believed the CIA killed JFK. Kash Patel responds. Let's watch.
I never believed that the CIA killed Kennedy.
No. You're talking to a guy that's read the entire JFK file.
You've seen all the secret stuff?
I've seen all of that, and I've seen the 7 pages of the 9/11 report. I've seen it all.
You don't say that to people that you can't tell what you saw.
It's kind of interesting. Glenn Beck says, I've never thought the CIA killed JFK. And Kash Patel's response is, well, I've read the whole file. No comment. Yeah, pretty interesting. Now, these things are all important. I think we need to know about them. I think just for the future trust of us in our intelligence agencies and law enforcement. He kind of looks crazy. I got to be honest with you. He's kind of got a crazy look in his eye, in a good way. Crazy like a fox. Yeah, I'd be worried. I'd be worried if I was the deep state. But when you talk about JFK and 9/11, like these things are important, and I think they should come out, and I think they should be unredacted and totally unclassified. I think the American people deserve to know decades later, what exactly is going on here. And the excuse they use is either people are still alive that are in these documents. If you want to know more about that, friend of the show, Foundering, has talked about one of the very few people that are still living from the era of JFK, and that would be Lee Harvey Oswald's CIA handler girlfriend. So that might be one reason that it's being prevented from leak. The other reason might be because it would disrupt international relations, because countries like Israel may have had a hand in the assassination, and that would disrupt relations with our greatest ally. So we can't release that. Well, I think it should all be released. But all of that is in the past. All of that is, stuff that, I don't know, we can't exactly get justice for it. The people that did it are long dead. And the changes that came about because of that assassination are kind of irreversible at this point, 70 years later. But there are things that he is doing that are pertinent to just the last few years. And I think it's important that we not let these things enter into a historical context. Things like the January 6th campaign of repression against activists and peaceful protesters. Things like Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. Things like the totally politicized trials carried out by Jack Smith against President Donald Trump. These things, they want you to think, are over and done with. It's over. It's done. The January 6ers are in jail. Nothing you can do about that. No, all of these things happened less than 10 years ago. All of these things, the people involved in them are still in office and certainly still alive and able to be brought up on charges, and they should be. And Kash Patel seems to agree with that sentiment. Let's go to clip 15 here. This one in particular, I think, is very, very important because, again, it's not enough to just stop them doing what they're doing. Like right now, every case against Donald Trump is either paused or dropped. All of Jack Smith's cases with the questioning the election and January 6th and all this nonsense, this totally illegitimate, unconstitutional appointment of a bulldog lawyer to just go after Donald Trump for whatever, in whatever case you can. Like all of that's over. All of the cases in New York have been paused indefinitely. The only remaining legal problem for Trump is Fani Willis. And if you just search Fani Willis's name, every headline you'll find from the news is just like, yeah, Fani Willis is on her last legs. It's not going anywhere. This will be dropped momentarily. The Supreme Court of Georgia will decide that this can't go on any longer, and Donald Trump won. He won all of those cases in one way or another. But that's not enough. No, it's not enough that somebody just attempted to rig our election and destroy a populist candidate, and then they weren't able to do that. It's not over at that point, just like you don't get away with attempted murder just because the guy didn't die. There's got to be attempted tyranny charges of some sort or another. And Kash Patel seems to be directly on top of this. Let's go to clip 15 here. Kash Patel on Jack Smith, not just being fired and disbarred for his illegal politicized activity, but actually charged for this corruption. Let's watch.
Jack Smith has just been exposed by Judge Cannon of doing what? Lying to a federal court. These guys keep doing it. The judge just unsealed documents in the Jack Smith case down in Florida, which says the prosecutors themselves have admitted to tampering with evidence, to moving the very boxes from one location outside of D.C. to South Florida before they ever even charged Donald Trump. How in the world can you not be prosecuting and charging these constitutional gangsters that are at DOJ? And they learn it from the same place, the top down, the same AGs, the same DAGs, the same FBI directors who are cheering them on. I hope Judge Cannon, he's an actual fun legal thing that should actually be occurring. Judge Cannon should be implementing actual contempt proceedings against Jack Smith and the Department of Justice for lying to a federal judge and withholding evidence of exclusion and innocence from Donald Trump. Those contempt proceedings would be righteous, and I'd like to see those. Maybe we could put Jack Smith in prison.
From Daily Caller, Jack Smith could face severe consequences for a year-long illegal crusade against Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith may not be in the clear even after dropping all charges against President-elect Trump. Smith's decision to dismiss the cases against Trump on Monday reignited calls for an investigation into his efforts. While it's unclear if probing Smith is high enough on Trump's priority list to translate talk into action, some aren't ready to simply brush Smith's months-long pursuit aside now that the threat is gone. So this story is from a few days ago. I'm not sure if this was after or before Kash Patel was announced as the potential FBI director, but regardless, it's clear what his position is. Jack Smith should not be able to just get away with this, especially the fact that he was never approved by the Senate, so his entire appointment at large is totally illegal, in which case I think Merrick Garland should be on the hook for attempted tyranny or, again, whatever charge you want to lay on him, using the power of the DOJ for political benefit. So the Trump team is very much going after the deep state in a very real way. And while it's tantalizing to hear these things talked about, I'm not going to be satisfied until we actually see some convictions, till we actually see some of these people made an example of, to remind people in power that you don't get to abuse the American system like this. You don't get to sick a career prosecutor on your political opponent and just say, go after him for whatever. Documents, January 6th, election integrity, like whatever. Just go after him. Just get him for something. Like that's blatantly illegal, cannot be allowed, and has to be made an example of. So next time someone's in office and wants to do that, they'll think, gee, remember Jack Smith? Remember how he was, thought he was untouchable and in charge and was going to take down Trump and ended up wearing orange for the last 50 years of his life? Like that's the lesson that we need to teach them. That's the example that needs to be made. And it's fun to hear them talking about that, but I, for one, won't be satisfied until we actually see the handcuffs go on. And again, that appears to be what he's pushing towards. So Kash Patel is good on declassification. He's good on, going after deep state people like Jack Smith and their attempts to destroy our electoral process by targeting unfairly and politically the main opponent to the sitting regime. But there's some other things that he's very good on, more so than just about anybody else in D.C., and that's things like January 6th. Kash Patel confirmed the Federalist report that the January 6th committee hid evidence of Trump's push for 10,000 National Guards. This is a huge issue and also relates to the pardon of Hunter Biden that we'll get to in a second, because when Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter, Trump's response was to say, is he going to pardon the January 6th people too? So again, another reaffirmation that Trump is going to pardon the January 6ers. Again, I'm not going to be happy until that signature is actually on the pardon. And, we actually get to shake Stuart Rhodes' hands and give Joe Biggs a hug. Like, we're not going to be happy until that happens. But it's good to see that this is being talked about, and it's good to see that Kash Patel is very much on the side of January 6th was entrapment, January 6th was a fraud, and the January 6th prisoners are political prisoners that deserve to be freed, pardoned, and frankly, I think they should have some sort of recompense. They should be, paid for the trouble that they've been put through, millions of dollars. Just like how the cities of New York gave $20,000 checks to people who were arrested for rioting, because apparently that was in violation of their civil rights. Well, January 6th prisoners have been completely stripped of their civil rights and totally abused and even tortured in some cases by the state. And they deserve not $20,000 checks, but $20 million checks if justice means anything in this country. Let's go now to clip number 16. Here's Kash Patel confirming that report about the January 6th committee hiding evidence of Trump's offer for 10,000 National Guard troops, an offer that, if it would have been accepted, would have prevented January 6th from ever happening. They denied those National Guard members for the express purpose of getting the excuse they needed to demonize every Trump supporter as a domestic terrorist and try to disbar Trump from running for re-election by claiming he was imposed an insurrection during January 6th. Here's Kash Patel.
I wanted to talk about what just came out with Molly Hemingway this weekend, where we now know that the January 6th committee had testimony from you and several others on what actually happened in the White House on the days leading up to January 6th, where Trump was calling for 10,000 troops to be on the street because he felt that the left was going to act up and actually hurt the people that were coming for these rallies. But they wouldn't do anything about it. They would not take him up on it at all. And that's now proven, and they knew that, but they kept that away from the official report.
Yes, Glenn, just like when the FBI went to a FISA court and lied to them and withheld exculpatory evidence just to target a political opponent and unlawfully surveil him, the January 6th committee took one page out of their book and repeated that same instance of conduct for a propaganda political endpoint. I was in the Oval Office as chief of staff to the DOD days before January 6th. President Trump unequivocally authorized 10 to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women. And why is that important, Glenn? Because only the president can make that authorization. But he is not allowed under the Constitution to deploy the order the deployment, of the National Guard. So what do? We dispatch senior DOD officials to Mayor Bowser, who's in charge of D.C., and the Capitol Police, who are in charge of the Capitol, and reported to Nancy Pelosi at that time. And they, in writing, rejected the use of additional National Guard. Not Donald Trump. They did that. And now we find out 2 years after I testified to the Jan 6 committee demanding a public hearing, and they failed to release my transcript for almost 2 years. A year and a half after that, they released the transcript of Tony Ornato, a career apolitical Secret Service officer assigned to the White House for presidential protection. And what does his transcript say? He confirms that President Trump, days before, authorized the use of 10 to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women. And
right, so we can take it down. I mean, everybody who watches InfoWars knows all of it. You all know all of this. But again, the point is that Kash Patel is very much on our side on all of these topics, including Jeffrey Epstein and his little black book. Let's go to clip number 17. Again, this is not about the JFK files from 60, 70 years ago. This is not about the 9/11 files from 30 years ago. This is about something that probably contains names of people sitting in office today. So let's go to this clip about Jeffrey Epstein's little black book, clip 17.
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
black book?
Black book.
FBI.
But who? That is that. I mean, there's
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI, just like the manifesto from the Nashville school shooting of the Catholic school. We still haven't seen that, right? It's not the Nashville police or PD saying we don't want this out. The FBI airmailed into that operation and said this is not getting out. Because they do that because this is another government gangster operation. All these local law enforcement communities get funding from the DOJ and FBI for local programs. And if you don't cooperate, you're not getting your $1 million for this, and you're not getting and that's a lot of money to these local districts. That's how they play the game. That's why you don't have a black book.
But the black book, it's not just sitting. I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the black book. And not just that. On day one, roll out all of the text messaging communications we were told were deleted. On day one, play the rest of the video of the pipe bomber. On day, one of the reforms I talk about in government gangsters is you need a central node to be continuously declassifying. This is another thing they do. They overclassify. And I'm telling you, as a former number 2 in the IC, they overclassify 50% of the stuff there to protect the deep state. Oh, no, you can't see that. Nothing to see here. Gina was a master at it, of doing it. And we still haven't seen half of the Russiagate report that we wrote. Still under lock and key.
All right, so again, Russiagate, January 6th, Jeffrey Epstein. He's on the ball on all of these, and it appears as though he will be approved. Here's Ted Cruz just laying out how the Senate will probably approve Kash Patel and why. Because of his extensive experience in very, very high up offices, he has the wherewithal, the capability, and the experience to occupy such a position. Let's go now to clip number 23.
Kash Patel, suggested by President Trump as the new leader of the FBI. How enthusiastic are you about that?
Listen, I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee. I think the entire slate of cabinet nominees President Trump has put forward is very strong. I believe every one of these cabinet nominees is going to be confirmed by the Senate. I think Kash Patel is going to be confirmed by the Senate. You look at his background. He has a serious professional background. He was a prosecutor. He was a public defender. He was a senior intelligence staffer on Capitol Hill. He was a senior intelligence staffer in the White House. He was the chief of staff of the Department of Defense. He was the deputy director of national intelligence. And I got to say, all of the weeping and gnashing of teeth, all of the people pulling their hair out, are exactly the people who are dismayed about having a real reformer come into the FBI and clean out the corrupted partisans who sadly have burrowed into senior career positions at the FBI. The FBI and the Department of Justice are two institutions incredibly important to the rule of law in the United States. I revere both. And one of the most tragic consequences of 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is both DOJ and the FBI have been politicized and weaponized. And I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee to take on the partisan corruption in the FBI.
A powerful endorsement from Ted Cruz, and he says not just Kash Patel, but basically everybody that Trump's putting forward will probably go through, which is good news because, as we know, getting Trump elected was never the end game. That never would solve anything. There's still entrenched power structures within the establishment that are working behind the scenes to destroy Donald Trump's agenda before it even gets going. So the Senate is a major roadblock here, and if they can actually get their heads out of their butts and get on board with the MAGA train, then we can actually move forward and have things like an FBI and a CIA that actually go after the tens of thousands of unrepentant criminal aliens that are in this country, or the massive human trafficking scandal that is destroying the lives of hundreds of thousands of children. Actual crimes that actually need a powerful federal law enforcement agency to go after, rather than going after, mothers at school board meetings, which is what they're focused on these days. So, and we'll get back to that, but we'll also move on to Syria, Ukraine, Georgia Color Revolution. We've got news out of the UK. Tons more news coming up in the second and third hour of American Journal. Stay tuned. Go to the Alex Jones store to support us.
Supplements are the second fastest growing industry in America over the last few decades. AI is now outstripped it. And that's because people continue to learn how amazing the compounds are that Mother Nature gives us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, not all supplements are created equal. InfoWars MD Line, more than 15 products, are all the very best you're going to find at extremely low prices. Take our CBD oil, gummies, and 1,000 milligram tincture. We private label it from a top company. They sell it retail for double what we sell it for. Does that give you an idea how amazing these products are and how low the prices are? Just get InfoWars MD CBD. Test it out, see how great it is, and then I know you're going to want the other products like our ashwagandha, like our super green food, like our 95% curcuminoid, turmeric 95. They're all available under the InfoWars MD line at InfoWarsStore.com. Thank you for your support. This keeps us on air. Plus, these are game-changing products. Get yours today.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Second hour of American Journal is on. I want to talk briefly about Biden's pardoning of Hunter. Joe Biden has pardoned Hunter Biden with a sweeping and broad pardon that pardons him for everything from 2014 onward, which is just wild and very coincidental that that's exactly when the Ukraine nonsense started. And look, this is such a broad and again broad and sweeping pardon. Like even Democrats and Democrat outlets are like kind of shocked by this, which I guess shows some semblance of honesty, because for the past several years they have been insisting, swearing upon their honor, that Joe Biden would never do such a thing. Nobody is above the law, right? Right? I was pretty sure they kept saying that over and over ad nauseum. It was infuriating, and they never stopped. Let's go to clip 11 here. This is the White House spokeswoman, Karine Jean-Pierre, just over and over again talking about what a non-starter this is, how ridiculous it is to even suggest that Hunter Biden would pardon his own son. That would be corruption. Let's watch.
Second one, would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no.
Okay. Let me go back to the first question of the briefing. I know you said not a lot's changed since yesterday and that it's a personal matter, but from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Again, you've also said several times that the president would not pardon or commute sentences for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
No, it's a no. The answer is no. I have nothing to add except for no, but also yes. But also, actually, yes, he is going to, and he did. So, whoopsie daisies. But it wasn't just the White House directly lying to our faces. It was everybody who pretended to believe them. Let's go down to clip number 1. Here's Andrew Wiseman telling us that, Biden would never pardon Hunter because he's got such a great character and he believes in the rule of law so much. Let's watch.
For us is a president who is living the rule of law. He is living it in the most personal way. He is not pardoning his son, which he could do. These are federal charges. Right. He is not doing that. He is not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country. Truth. And if you want to know if he believes it, you could actually see what is happening with his own son. I'm not saying that he should get credit for it because it is the right thing to do.
That's the norm, but Trump is beneath it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's that the idea that you can't see it, or is that really what's going on? Or when you can see what he is actually living by is his own son is being prosecuted, and he is allowing the norms that are required to live in a democracy to go forward.
And the funny part is all the people saying that exact thing are now mad at Biden, not because he lied and is destroying the rule of law and just doing all of the things that they there very righteously claimed he would never do. They don't actually care about that. They are mad that he is setting the stage for Trump to do the same thing. Like they have this, it is some sort of Trump derangement syndrome where they can't just go, wow, Joe Biden is pardoning his son with no legitimate reason all the way back to 2014 for all of these crimes he was convicted on. Yeah, that's bad. That's against the rule of law. I thought nobody was above the law. They never say that. What they say is, well, now when Trump does it, he'll be able to point to you as an example. This is bad because Trump might do the thing. No, Joe Biden is doing the thing. So you can be mad at that. It's okay. It's okay. You can be mad at the guy actually destroying the rule of law. You don't have to imagine a scenario where that opens the door for somebody else to do it. You absolute cretins. You absolute psychopaths. Joe Biden is doing the bad thing. We can all see it. We'll return to that on the other side of the statement.
Taking a record of the hearts and minds of the American people, it's the American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the second hour of American Journal. I'm your host, Harrison Smith, coming to you live this Monday morning, December 2nd. We're going to get back into the pardon of Hunter Biden by Joe Biden. And I want you to realize how out of context this all is. So often, you hear me harp on this over and over. Things are treated like both sides are acting the same, but only one side is getting in trouble for it. Both sides are politicizing the legal system, but Democrats get away with it and Republicans don't. No. Every single accusation and charge and case against Donald Trump is totally fraudulent. Shouldn't exist, has never existed. I mean, just taking one example my God, I it's like they all get jumbled up in my head. It's like you've got him being charged for fraud because the bank decided that Mar-a-Lago was worth as much as he said it was, but the government disagreed. So now that's fraudulent. And even though he paid back the loan, he owes $400 million. Like just totally ridiculous nonsense. Or he signed a check to his lawyer that may or may not have been paid to pay off some person that he slept with, totally normal, or maybe it didn't happen. Like, and to get that, they had to upgrade it from a misdemeanor to a felony, and also extend the statute of limitations, and also get people to lie on stand. Like, just all of it, totally, blatantly, outrageously fraudulent, because he doesn't actually commit crimes. On the other hand, you have Hunter Biden and the Hunter laptop, and he's literally on video smoking crack and on text message buying hookers by race, right? No yellow, right? And just insane actual criminality. Now, he would have totally gotten away with that, absolutely, except that the Democrats needed to make it look like their prosecution of Donald Trump was somehow even-handed. See, the only reason they ever charged Hunter Biden in the first place was because they wanted to charge Donald Trump. They wanted to be able to go, but we're also charging Hunter Biden, so this totally isn't political. It's totally not partisan because we're doing it to both sides. See, the actual relentless criminal human trafficker, scumbag, drug addict, moron, Hunter Biden, which obviously that's not the actual problem. The problem is the millions of dollars from Ukrainian oligarchs in exchange for, favors from the United States government, the actual legitimate corruption, selling off of the power of your offices that Joe Biden himself is involved in, and he's protecting himself by pardoning Hunter Biden. But regardless, okay, but all of that to the side, they go, well, we're actually charging Hunter Biden for tax evasion, for lying on a good application to buy a gun. Who cares? And that makes it okay that we're also charging Donald Trump with talking about a rape that didn't happen 30 years ago. It's just total nonsense. So it's the sort of cyclical nature of evil, I think, that because they want to carry out evil against Donald Trump, they have to pretend to care about evil that Hunter Biden was engaged in, and now they're having to pardon him and totally reveal what despicable liars they are, and how the term nobody is above the law actually doesn't mean anything to them when they're pardoning the legitimate criminals in their own families. It's all exposing what we all know to be true in the first place. From Infowars.com, enough is enough. Biden pardons Hunter for unfair prosecution by his own DOJ, saying, quote, no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out because he is my son, and that is wrong, Joe Biden said in a statement. By your own DOJ? Okay, you're the president, so you singled him out as your son? No, he never would have been charged at all if not for your desire to have the semblance of even-handedness as you relentlessly politicize the Department of Justice and go after Donald Trump. This is obvious. This pardon comes ahead of Hunter Biden's December 12th sentencing for his conviction on federal gun charges, as well as an upcoming December 16th sentencing in a separate criminal case in which he's pled guilty on federal tax evasion charges. Which, again, out of all of the just insane crimes that Hunter Biden is on camera admitting to, tax evasion and lying on a gun application are like nobody cares. That actually doesn't matter. Things that do matter are the agreements with the Ukrainian government to lean on the big guy to get prosecutors fired because they're getting too close to the corruption in that country. And it's no coincidence that 2014 just happens to be the same year that the American State Department overthrew the duly elected government of Ukraine and started to build biolabs for which Meta Biota and Hunter Biden's other companies were deeply ingrained and made huge profit from. Republicans hammer Biden's nobody is above the law claim following Hunter pardon, saying it aged like fine milk. It was always a lie. I mean, this was never up for debate. Again, I don't even think it's that big of a deal. Like it's what you kind of expect, because not only is Hunter Biden pardoning his son, which obviously I'd probably pardon my son if I was president too, and he turned out like a whoremongering, drug addict, God forbid. But sure, I'd probably pardon him too. That's not really the issue. The issue is the relentless lying and also the massive corruption that's really at the heart of it. And this is just what they do. Same thing with the Hunter Biden laptop. How they're like, oh, they just like the salacious pictures of Hunter Biden naked. And it's like, no, it's more about the messages where he's saying 10% for the big guy and getting pissed off that he's having to earn so much money for his dad, or the conversations where, he talks about getting business partners, foreign business partners, the text messages where he says, my business partner is the spy chief of China, things like that. The treason that they talk about in that laptop, that was sort of the point, but they distract you with the salacious material, which in and of itself is also horrifying and indicative of who the Bidens are. But also it's the continual denials that he would ever do such a thing because he's such an honorable man that cares so much about the rule of law. Yeah, aged like milk. That's exactly right. Hunter Biden pardon, live updates from BBC. Joe Biden issues full and unconditional pardon for his son. Full and unconditional all the way back to 2014. President-elect Trump calls the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice, while some Republicans have branded Joe Biden a liar. Yes, Republicans have branded him a liar. No, correction, BBC. Republicans have noticed that Joe Biden lies, and that fact of reality makes him a liar. Trump reacted to the pardoning of Hunter by talking about January 6 rioters' cases. Again, another good signal that Trump is on the path to fulfill his central campaign promise of pardoning the January 6 rioters. He did make that promise. He did say he would do that over and over. And there's been some discussion as to whether that should be on an individual basis or a blanket pardon. I think it has to be a blanket pardon. I don't think there's anybody on January, even the people that did something on January 6th, like even if you bopped a cop in the head with a stick on January 6th, no cops died, no cops were seriously injured. It actually wasn't that big of a deal. But regardless, even if that was the case, it was all in response to the police themselves firing non-lethal ammunition at a totally peaceful crowd and starting the riot in the first place. I think everything that happens in the riot following that is the responsibility, and the people at fault are the ones who started the riot, started the violence, caused the whole thing to happen in the first place, as well as the officials who refused to have an adequate military or law enforcement presence to prevent this sort of thing from happening. And the people that were arrested, and Jake Chansley is like the best example. Now that we have all of the footage from that day where he's literally being led around by the cops. He's just like with a cop the entire time going, can I do this? And the cop's like, yes, you can. And then they throw him in solitary confinement for months on end, trying to break him spiritually and psychologically. Like, that dude deserves a $10 million payout at the bare minimum from the U.S. government for the torture that they put him through in a total entrapment, total fraudulent trial, totally hiding evidence that exonerated him in order to get the conviction, in order to place him unfairly in solitary confinement. God bless that man. And he deserves millions of dollars from the state for what they put him through. At the very least, you can't give him back the year of his life you stole from him. You can never return to him the sanity that he likely just barely holding on to after day after day after day in a bright, unair conditioned concrete box for his crime of actually telling people to leave the Capitol when Donald Trump put out that message. So very good to see Donald Trump, talking about pardoning these people who he actually calls the J6 hostages, which is a correct characterization. He says this, quote, does the pardon given to by Joe to Hunter include the January 6 hostages who have now been imprisoned for years, wrote Trump on Truth Social in reference to those convicted at the U.S. Capitol riot who he's pledged to pardon. Such an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Yes, he calls them hostages, which I would say is accurate, totally accurate characterization there. So again, good news, another good hint. We will not be happy or satisfied or celebrate until those people are fully released. And I'm thinking maybe we should have a time period. The typical time period is 100 days, and that's all the way back from FDR. He had a very successful first 100-day plan. He did that. Maybe that's a good, what do we want Trump to do by 100 days? I would like him to do the January 6 pardons by 100 hours. I think that's something that could be done in the first 100 hours of his presidency. Have the pardons prepared. As soon as he's in office, sign him off, done. That could be done in a day. And we can give him a little bit of leeway, but I think there's got to be some sort of time period, or else June of next year, we're going to be sitting there going, no, he's definitely going to pardon him. He keeps saying that he's going to. It's probably going to happen soon. And then it's 4 years go by and nothing happened. We can't let that happen again. There's got to be some sort of time period where it's if you don't do this by this period, I don't know what's going to happen, but we can't be sitting around twiddling our thumbs waiting for this to take place, because the political will is there. Truth is on our side. Justice is on our side. The mandate of the people is on our side. Said it over and over since the election. Donald Trump did not move to the center to bring about his landslide victory. He went farther to the right than either of the previous campaigns. Farther to the right in 2016, farther to the right than he was in 2020. And yet every county, every state, everybody swung to the right to vote for Donald Trump. That is a mandate. 76% was the latest poll I saw in favor of using the military for deportations. It's just got to happen. They just got to do it. The media is going to squeal. The Democrats are going to whine and cry. Do it. Do it anyway. Pardon the January 6ers. Start the deportations. I say if that's not done by April 1st, we got a big problem. We got a big problem if neither one of these things has started by mid-February. But April 1st, that's got to be a hard deadline for me. If they're not pardoned and the deportations haven't actually physically begun, by that point, we're going to have an issue. We're going to have a little bit of an issue here. There's a story on this from Infowars.com. Will Trump pardon J6ers from Raw Egg Nationalist? In the wake of the president's pardon of his son Hunter, Donald Trump has given perhaps the clearest sign that he will pardon the protesters who have been imprisoned in his role in the events of the 6th of January. And again, I'll just say from a populist perspective, from a diehard Trump supporter's perspective, it can't just be individuals pardoned. It has to be everybody. The whole thing was a setup. It doesn't matter what the individuals did on that day. Everything that happened following the breakout of the riot is the consequence of the setup by Nancy Pelosi, Muriel Bowser, the Capitol Police, and everybody involved in denying National Guard, in starting the riot in the first place, in being totally unprepared to the point of willful negligence, and allowing all of that to happen. It doesn't matter if you threw a stick at a cop, if the whole reason that you're fighting the cops is because they blasted you in the face with the beanbag from 100 yards away while you were standing there holding a sign. All right. That's just my perspective. So blanket pardons, and I'd say even pardons aren't enough. I'd say we've got to have some sort of recompense, some sort of remuneration, some sort of payback for the suffering these people have gone through. They've had their lives destroyed. They've had their businesses shut down. Some of these guys have died in prison. Some of them have committed suicide. Their families need to get payouts from the government. And again, it's not like this is outrageous. It's not like this is out of the ordinary. Something like $80 million has been paid out to the Black Lives Matter rioters of 2020, the people who burned the whole country, the people who caused billions of dollars of damage across the entire country, burned city blocks, fought the cops, throwing bricks at innocent bystanders. Like, those people got $10,000 to $20,000 checks individually in Philadelphia, in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Seattle. Those local governments paid out for the abuse and the mental anguish they caused by arresting rioters. Okay, these people didn't suffer at all. There were no consequences for their action. They were put in handcuffs for about 30 minutes so that the whole thing could calm down, and then they were released. And then they got $10,000 checks from the government. So if that's worth $10,000, simply being prevented from committing crime, simply being stopped from committing the relentless violence we experienced day in and day out over that year, I think somebody who's like a plumber from Arkansas that got, let into the Capitol high-fiving police who were holding the door for them and then were put in solitary confinement for months on end and had their entire lives destroyed and had their door kicked in at 3 o'clock in the morning and gun pointed at their children's faces, they deserve big payouts from the government, not just because it's the right thing to do and justice demands it, but perhaps as another warning shot to the federal government that you can't carry out a literal insurrection where you weaponize the DOJ against your political opponents and carry out in their words, quote, shock and awe campaign by going after the biggest influencers first. All of that's outrageous. We need major, major reform to make that right. And again, the pardon of Hunter Biden is so outrageous. Even the left-wing magazines are not happy about it. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, this is what they wanted. Maybe they feel like fools because they're the ones like Andrew Weissman going on Sunday shows and going, Joe Biden is honorable and we're all honorable and he would never abuse, nobody's above the law. He'll never do this. And then he does. And they all look like total idiot frauds that they are. So from Politico, we haven't seen a pardon as sweeping as Hunter Biden's in generations. Yeah, it's a little out of the ordinary. It's a little outrageous, actually, if you think about it. Hunter Biden's pardon looks a lot like Richard Nixon's. President Joe Biden's grant of clemency on Sunday night, an extraordinary political act with extraordinary legal breadth, insulates his son from ever facing federal charges over any crime he possibly could have committed over the past decade. Experts on pardons say they could think of only one other person who's received a presidential pardon so sweeping in generations. It was Nixon, who was given a blanket pardon by Gerald Ford in 1974. However, in that case, Nixon was in fact the targeted by a totally fraudulent scam to get him out of office. So he deserved it. Hunter Biden, on the other hand, total criminal, and Biden is in fact protecting himself by shielding his son from prosecution over criminal activity that Joe and Hunter were partners in. Okay? Marjorie Taylor Greene went off on this on X. I'm just going to read the whole thing verbatim because it's very powerful and succinct. She says the FBI didn't raid Hunter Biden's bedroom. They raided Barron's bedroom. Just think about that. That's how morally corrupt all these people are. Joe did not pardon Hunter because he's a father who loved his son, like the Mockingbird media and Democrat liars are saying. Joe pardoned Hunter all the way back in 2014 when Hunter started biolabs in Ukraine, started with Burisma, and began money laundering through dozens of LLC shell companies through business deals in many foreign countries, including China. Hunter is not just Joe's son, he is his business partner, and Hunter sold his dad's power and influence for millions while Joe was VP and beyond. That's why the sweeping pardon of 2014 till now. It covers VP to 4 years running for president to 4 years of being president, 11 years of all kinds of crimes. But the bigger crimes are all the people in the FBI, DOJ, State Department, CIA, and other agencies that all knew about the Biden family corrupt business and crimes, yet stayed quiet, provided cover, lied about it, but instead went after their political enemies. The 51 intelligence officers who signed their name to that lie, to a lie that Hunter Biden's laptop with all the evidence wasn't real, they all abused their power in order to create the illusion that Trump, not Biden, was the criminal. All of these people lying today saying Joe's a father who loves his son. Well, they're clinging to the lies and will gladly abuse power and weaponize the government against all of us if they're ever in charge again. How many more pardons are coming for Biden family members and others? It's a long time till January 20th. And of course, the timing is interesting in a number of ways. First of all the way back in 2014, the exact time period where the Ukraine real cesspit started going is very interesting. The fact that it happened right now is interesting, right? As Kash Patel is designated as the FBI head and still 2 months out of the inauguration. He could have waited till the last minute. Why didn't he? I think it's a reasonable question. But we're gonna move on, but just everybody, Washington, D.C. reacts in shock decision. So everybody in D.C. is shocked by this, and it just totally destroys any Democrat argument about nobody's above the law. Almost nobody's above the law. As Zero Foxtrot on X notes, so Biden pardons his son Hunter for all the crimes he committed, admission of guilt between 2014 and the 1st of December 2024. Do you know what else coincides with that timeline? The Euromaidan revolution in Ukraine. The president's pardon power does not extend to state crimes or private civil offenses. The Supreme Court has held that a pardon is, quote, an imputation of guilt and acceptance of a confession of it. That, according to Burdick versus United States 1927, which may have implications for the recipient's legal status and potential future legal proceedings. So all of this is very deeply and highly orchestrated from the ground up. John Harwood, just one of the many people on the left who made a fool of by this pardon. He said all the way back in June of this year, people who insist Biden will pardon Hunter after specifically ruling it out are telling on themselves. They can't imagine somebody acting on principle and keeping his word. Yeah, why not? Why can we not imagine that? Because it was a lie the whole time, folks. It's really not that complicated. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about World War III. Of course, that is tied into all of this since the reason we're going to war in Ukraine has nothing to do with democracy. It's not a democracy. Zelensky's a total tyrant, long exceeded his tenure as president of that country. But, as long as there's a war, he gets to stay in power. Very convenient for the guy who decides whether they're in war or not. So all that's deeply tied in together. We'll get to it. I do want to remind you, not just to go to the AlexJonesStore.com, but to do it now, to do it today. It's the beginning of Cyber Week. It's Cyber Monday, massive discounts. Even more than the normal discount. There's two really good reasons, two things coming up that, you got to get the move on. You've got Christmas, so info warriors in your life, or just people who, like supplements, enjoy freedom, whatever it is. Do your Christmas shopping at the AlexJonesStore.com, and you got to do that soon if you want it in by Christmas. Maybe I can get the exact dates up here, but that's coming up. The other thing that's coming up is New Year's Eve, and everybody has New Year's resolutions, but usually people don't start thinking about them until New Year's. Well, if you want to, work out more, get better sleep, be a better husband, whatever it is that you're, going to try to do in the new year, get prepared for it today. Order the supplements you need today, and I'll build an entire, agenda around supplements. Going, okay, I need to, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll take these, and then at noon I'll take these, and I got to work out at night, so I got to take these. Be prepared for your New Year's resolutions at the AlexJonesStore.com.
My fellow Patriots, there are a lot of amazing Patriot gear, supplements, you name it, at the AlexJonesStore.com. But we've now added a whole bunch of other really cool items. There are a bunch of amazing campaign coins for InfoWars for $17.76. For the Fight for Liberty on the site as low as $9.99. Some of the challenge coins are $14.97. They're great fundraisers for us. They have a lot of weight in them. They look great. They're great conversation starters, great gifts, great keepsakes, mementos, and you know that you've supported the InfoWar. So I want to thank you all for your past support and encourage you now to go to thealexjonesstore.com, our amazing sponsor that will keep us on air one way or the other. If InfoWars gets shut down, that's okay, because they're a great sponsor. They're not owned by me, and the bad guys won't be able to shut down the AlexJonesStore.com. So go there for the campaign coins and so much more today, and keep me in the fight. Thank you so much for your support.
Infowars.com is tomorrow's news today.
You're tuned in to the American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith. Watch it live right now at band.video.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the heart of the resistance. We're going to talk about World War III now. The very dangerous situation that Deep State seems to be driving us inexorably towards, despite, common sense and logic and the will of the people and just the human desire to continue existence. Yeah, all of that is up in the air at this point. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what's going on in Europe as well. I'll take your calls throughout the third hour today. And I wasn't going to do a plug here, but I did just run and get some coffee during that break, and you guys should see some of the new shirts we have. There's like piles of shirts out there. This company that we're working with for the Alex Jones store is just constantly coming out with the coolest shirts. I don't know how long they're going to, be available, because it's like they come out so rapidly. There's one I just saw. I don't even know if it's for sale yet. It says 1776 with a big lightning bolt. Alex Jones was right. And it's like a concert tour. It's got the list of just some of the biggest things that we were right about here at InfoWars. They're just very cool shirts. So if you want to do your Christmas shopping, now is the time. Go to the AlexJonesStore.com. Yeah, there it is. 1776 AC/DC t-shirt. That is just cool. The red lightning bolt, 1776. Then there's the, tour dates on the back, but they're not tour dates. It's things like the lab leak theory and 9/11 being an inside job and Jeffrey Epstein. So it's like, not only is it a way to, show off you're an info warrior, you'll get high fives and fist bumps anytime you wear this out in public. But in case anybody is like, Alex Jones, what he's ever been right about, well, you just turn around. You just turn around and go, well, read this. Lady, sir, whoever you are. Lab leak theory, COVID-19, weather modification, Jeffrey Epstein scandal, government spying, social media censorship, 9/11 terrorist attacks. Just a few highlights here. Just a few highlights on the, tour dates on the tour through the destruction of the deep state. It's amazing. It's amazing the success that we've had. It's amazing that with everything they've thrown at us, we still continue to not just operate, but dominate. It's a beautiful thing, and you love seeing it. And we wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you so much for your support. And I hope that you're wearing those shirts proudly to let everybody know that you know what the truth is. So let's get into World War III. Let's get into World War III, shall we? Because we still have, there's just so much to talk about. What's happening in the UK is just insane. The attacks against the media going on right now are really kind of mind-boggling. And there's a lot of immigration news as well. But let's focus on what's happening overseas. The attack on Aleppo by Syrian rebels that seemed to come out of nowhere. I think New York Times actually accurately characterizes this. Syrian rebels struck when Assad's allies were weakened and distracted for years. President Bashar al-Assad of Syria was able to beat back opposition fighters with the help of Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah. Now, those allies are weakened and distracted by their own conflicts, and rebels have seized the opportunity to shift the balance of power. The rebel fighters spent months training and preparing for a surprise offensive, but even they may not have predicted how quickly they would advance. On Saturday, the rebels said they had captured almost all of Aleppo, one of Syria's biggest cities, and they now control a broad stretch of land in the west and northwest of the country, according to the rebels and Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a British-based war monitor. The timing of the assault and its success, analysts say, reveal the vulnerabilities of Mr. al-Assad's once formidable coalition. And there's a couple things to this. This is all part of the same conflict, right? This is just another aspect of the war on Gaza. It's another aspect of the war in Ukraine. Like, all of these are deeply intertwined. And again, I don't think it will be a complicated issue for future historians to look back on and go, okay, World War III had started already. People alive didn't realize it. We do, obviously, but we realize everything a couple years before everybody else does. We've been in World War III for a while, and just because you put Ukrainian uniforms on American soldiers doesn't mean that anybody's tricked by who's actually at war right now. It's the United States and our proxies versus Iran, China, Russia, and Syria, the Syrian government. It's really not all that complicated. Again, I think this has to do with the ceasefire with Hezbollah. I think the timing of that is about right. In other words, and I explained this in the first segment of the show, but in case you missed it, a quick little rundown. Israel is hemorrhaging money, totally collapsing economically, only surviving because of the billions upon billions of dollars sent by us. But even that's not enough to make up for the fact that they have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of displaced people inside their own country, internal refugees from the north of Israel who left their farms and their land in the north to avoid rocket fire from Hezbollah. Now, these people have said, we don't care about a ceasefire. We're not going back if Hezbollah is still able to bomb us, because Israel seems incapable of protecting them. So they're like, we're not going back until Hezbollah is taken care of. Well, you can't take care of Hezbollah until Syria is taken care of, because there's supply lines from Syria through Iran and Iraq to Hezbollah, keep them resupplied, keep them connected to the wider, what they call, axis of resistance. So they failed. Israel totally failed, worse than 2006. They attempted incursions into Lebanon. They totally failed. They resorted to simply bombing historical sites, totally petulantly, just killing hundreds of innocent people, thousands of innocent people, hundreds of innocent children. I think the average was 3 a day for months on end, 200 plus children murdered in these bombing campaigns, hitting apartment blocks in the dead of night. Just brutal, horrific, pointless, genocidal madness, total madness. And now there's a ceasefire, and they basically didn't even get to the Litani River, which was like the first objective of many. So they totally failed. They failed to dislodge Hezbollah. They failed to even damage their capabilities significantly. So now they get a ceasefire. That gives them the breathing room to instead focus on ousting Bashar al-Assad, which seems to be a prerequisite if they want to get rid of Hezbollah, which they have to if they want their people to return to north, which they have to if they want their economy to remain solvent. So this is the chain of events that, in my interpretation, has brought about the renewed conflict in Syria, which, of course, was started by us in the first place, as we laid out earlier in the show with Jeffrey Sachs, describing the method by which the CIA and others, and there's headlines that keep getting posted where it's like, in Syria, Pentagon armed militias are fighting CIA armed militias. What a disaster. What a catastrophe. It's like, well, yeah, ISIS is us. Like, we fund, like, it's like ISIS fighters are emerging from this area. And you look at the area and it's like, oh, there's a big CIA base right there. Would you look at that? It's like, well, no, we only train the moderate Syrian rebels. Oh, okay. Oh, great. Oh, right. The moderate Syrian rebels that are waving ISIS flags. And by the way, those same commanders or the ISIS commanders that we provided them to train their troops, then went to Ukraine, and there's video of, Middle Eastern people with ISIS patches on their shoulder training Ukrainian militias. All of that's sort of to the side. Let's look again at what's going on in Syria, and we have video of this. First of all, what Israel is doing in Lebanon, or was doing up until the ceasefire, just totally destructive, pointless genocide. It's genocide. Clip number 8. Israel destroyed the mausoleum of Simon Peter, Apostle of Christ, in the village of Sharma in southern Lebanon. We can go ahead and roll this. Just a quick clip where you just see the piles of rubble, just total destruction. Again, this is a sacred site, the mausoleum of one of Jesus's direct followers, like somebody that Jesus knew. That's how old Christianity is in this area. But, Christianity, despite the Muslim invasion, despite, Roman oppression, despite the Ottoman Turks and the Sassanid emperors out of Persia, like, Christianity survived all of that. It might not survive this conflict. Since, to pick a totally arbitrary date, I don't know, about 1948, the percentage of Christian populations in Middle Eastern countries has absolutely cratered. And despite 2,000 years of existence, it's sort of on its last legs, and Israel is doing the heavy lifting in destroying it completely. Just totally brutal and horrific and bad. I guess bad is the way to put it, if you want it to be put simply. NPR has this story. Who are the rebels who have seized control of Aleppo, Syria? The rapid military advance of a Syrian rebel group the last week has dramatically shifted the front lines and upended long-held assumptions about a Middle East conflict that appeared stuck in a stalemate. The group behind these dramatic developments, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, has held a consequential but checkered role in the country's long-running civil war. It's not a civil war. The people attacking Syria are from Saudi Arabia, or in fact, they were radicalized in Saudi Arabian mosques in Europe. So that's an interesting aspect to all of this. I've said for a long time, I thought the Ukraine war was meant to be a sort of white ISIS. Like, I think that's the reason why they wanted the Nazi battalions out front and center, is because it worked really well with ISIS, where you had all of these radicalized Muslims in Europe who would be paid by the Saudi Arabian government or the CIA or whoever to actually go to the Middle East and, fight in a holy war against their enemies, fellow Muslims. So I think they tried to do the same thing in Ukraine, where they thought, okay, we'll make this thing, we'll have Nazis be at the forefront, and then maybe just like all the radicalized jihadists from Europe went to Syria to be killed by Hezbollah as part of ISIS, maybe the Nazis in Europe, the radicalized white people in Europe, will go to Ukraine to be slaughtered and to slaughter other white people in Russia. That didn't really work out, but I think that was at least part of the intention behind the Ukrainian war. It never really worked, but it does work very well in the Middle East. So when they say Syrian civil war, what they mean is attack on Syria by a consortium of Western-backed jihadi militants funded by Saudi Arabia. Just to clarify, civil war in this regard. With its roots in the early days of Syria's 2011 uprising, the Organization of the Liberation of Greater Syria swept down this week from its strongholds in the northwest countryside to take control of a vast swath of a country that had long been under the grip of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces. HTS surprised many people, including themselves, when they seized control of Aleppo, the country's second largest city. With minimal opposition from government forces, they have subsequently pushed farther south in the past 2 days, heading towards the capital Damascus, as fighting has broken out in a number of towns and cities across the country. They say, quote, "We succeeded in breaking the first line and then the second line and then third," said General Ahmed Hamsi, a commander of a unit that's been trying to coordinate the rebel offensive, during an interview with NPR. "We hit positions of the leadership and succeeded in cutting off communications between them and their troops. That created big chaos. It was a big psychological defeat." This, of course, the biggest beneficiaries, as we noted, in the Daily Dispatch and beyond, as reported by Press TV, Iran's foreign ministry says lingering and illegal American military presence in Syria is the main reason behind the persistence of terrorism in the Arab country, describing the Israeli regime as the main beneficiary of the regional insecurity. And this, of course, also draws people and men and money and attention from the Russian conflict in Ukraine to Russia's protection of Syria, as they've been doing for years. And again, this is another thing where people act like Russia's involvement in Syria is something illegal, or like, I don't know, they try to bring up international law when it comes to this. But again, just like we always talk about, when you're on the left in America, you get to do whatever you want. When you're on the right, you have to very strictly follow the rules. It's the same thing in international politics, where America has, militias and battalions and forts and just all sorts of things in Syria, totally illegal, totally foreign occupation. Like, we have no right to be there. We have no permission to be there, but we are there. And rule of law means nothing when we're the ones breaking it. But Russia, on the other hand, has to do everything by the book. And so they've done what they've done in Syria very much by the book. Syria reached out and said, we need help. Russia said, we will agree to help you. They came in with permission of the sovereign leadership of Syria, totally by the book and legal in terms of international law. Just to be clear, Clip 22 is Russian Air Force carpet bombing terrorist in Aleppo. And I don't think we need the audio on this, but maybe a little bit low, but it's just a night vision, typical type of war footage that you see, where it's just flashing green lights showing not the details, but the scale, scope, the size of the Russian bombardments against the rebel positions. And Putin has said basically totally gloves off. He's told the Syrian government, do whatever you need to, and Russia will help you do whatever you need to prevent the attack of this offshoot of ISIS, or Daesh, as it's called. This foreign minister of Iran addressed the way foreign-backed efforts enabled the resurgence of terrorism in Syria, saying neither the development nor the ISIS Takfiri group, terror group, has ever posed a threat to the U.S. and its interests. And that's one of the interesting things you find when you look into this is people like ISIS. It'll be like their headlines where it's like, ISIS accidentally attacks Israel, immediately apologizes. And it's like, what? Why? They're ISIS. What? ISIS is apologizing to Israel of all places? Like, what's actually going on here? Well, it's not that complicated. ISIS, one of the primary reasons ISIS was created, and this was admitted by a U.S. general, was to take on Hezbollah. And if you look at, war maps, search, time-lapse map Syrian war, and you can see all the forces in different colors sort of attacking each other. And you can see the critical role Hezbollah played in defeating ISIS. Not only did they get training and experience in going against ISIS, they were armed for this reason, and ISIS itself was at least in part created for that purpose, to go after Hezbollah and to go after Hezbollah's support system through the axis of resistance from Iran to Iraq to Syria to Lebanon. So I think it has a lot to do with Israel's conflicts in Gaza and its economic, the tenuous position it finds itself in. We have a few videos on this note. At least I thought we did. Let me find them, and we'll go to them in just a second. But essentially, here it is, clip number 5. This is a former director of Mossad admitting that Israeli arms al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups, and this group going after, it's now taken Aleppo, is an offshoot of al-Qaeda in some regard. So let's go now to clip number 5.
Okay, you say no preference. There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded al-Qaeda-aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
So it's purely humanitarian, you say. So there's no tactical or political strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Yeah, I think people said that in Afghanistan too. Would you also treat Hezbollah fighters?
No. I would not treat...
Have you not just contradicted what you told me 60 seconds ago about humanely treating your enemies?
No. I think as far as Hezbollah fighters are concerned, with them we have a different account.
So let me be clear, you're happy to treat al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah, a totally different account, because Hezbollah has carried out the type of actions against us which preclude us from going into what the al-Qaeda has done. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
Yeah. Pretty interesting stuff. Again, that clip was from a little while ago, but this stuff is interminable. It never changes. It's all the same thing over and over again. And we'll get to, some of the wider World War III level, geopolitical machinations going on here. But I that was a pretty good example right there. And it's not just, Israel. Turkey's obviously involved in this. I think part of this is Turkey sort of stabbed Russia in the back over this sort of sneak attack from Syria that came out of Turkish-aligned places. And we've talked forever about the ultimate conflict, World War III, starting between Russia and Turkey. When it really gets kicked off, when it's undeniable what's going on, it's going to be nukes, Russia nuking Turkey. That's where our nukes are held. America's nukes in Europe are held in Turkey. And there's religious issues with the Orthodox Greeks being enemies of Turkey. It's all sort of complicated, but regardless, there's a statement from the General Command of the Syrian Army and Armed Forces. During the last 24 hours in the countryside of Aleppo and Idlib, 5 command headquarters, 7 ammunition depots, and various weapons were destroyed, some of which contained drones. They eliminated more than 400 terrorists, including various foreign nationalities. So that was the Russian response, airstrikes of the terrorist positions. And this is pretty clear-cut who's the terrorists and who are the good guys in this situation. Even if you're not a fan of Bashar al-Assad, you're probably less of a fan of al-Qaeda and Nusra Front and their friends in ISIS, which is much closer to who these rebels are. Syria's Assad says conflict in north is a bid to, quote, redraw map of region. Syrian's President Bashar al-Assad said an Islamist-led offensive in the country's north was an attempt to redraw the map of the region. In remarks during a call with his Iranian counterpart Monday, the terrorist escalation reflects far-reaching goals of dividing the region and fragmenting the countries in it and redraw the map in line with the objectives of the United States and the West, Assad said, according to a statement from the Syrian presidency. And I think it's interesting when you have that line, Assad says this is an attempt to redraw the map. And then there's this article from The Guardian, which you almost got to appreciate the way that they phrase things. From The Guardian, from Beirut to Khartoum, the Arab world is changing beyond our recognition. It's just changing, you guys. Bashar al-Assad is like, well, it's the U.S. and the West are using terrorists to try to redraw the map. And the way The Guardian interprets that is just like, the Arab world is just changing. It's changing. It's evolving. Things are happening, right? Nobody's at fault. There are no designs being fulfilled here. There's no plans and strategy from psychopaths in power who are trying to remake the world in an image that comports to their continuing dominance. No, it's just changing beyond our recognition. It's probably the Arabs doing it. It's like whenever they talk about an Israeli airstrike on Lebanon and they say, Lebanese airstrike, this is this. It's like, okay, it wasn't the Lebanese airstriking themselves, right? Just like the Arab world isn't just changing beyond our recognition. It's being changed by force, by outside forces who want to destroy their strength and take them over and kill anybody that opposes them. The Arab world is increasingly divided between those who are losing everything and those who have everything. In the past few months, there's been a grim new ritual whenever I meet people from some Arab countries. It's sort of a mutual commiseration and checking in. How are you? Where is your family? I hope you're safe. I hope they're safe. I hope you're okay. We're with you. There's a comfort to it, but also an awkwardness. Comfort because the words are earnest and solidarity almost unbearably meaningful. Awkward because the scale of what many are enduring is too large to be captured in those words. Everything feels shot through with survivor's guilt, but also a little bit of resolve in the knowledge that the calamities tearing apart our nations have closed the distances between us. At the heart of it all is Palestine, an open trauma that haunts interactions. A muteness has set in, where before there was anger and shock. Added to this is Lebanon. Before the ceasefire, a Lebanese friend told me it was a strange feeling that you may not have a country to return to soon. Crap, another said when I asked her what the situation was for her family in Beirut. We moved on. Yeah, from Beirut to Khartoum, the Arab world is just changing beyond our recognition. I mean, sure, it's because it's being bombed to oblivion by a genocidal sect of psychopaths that are bent on world domination, but, it is changing. It is changing beyond our recognition. We'll get back to why on the other side. It has to do with Russia, warm water ports, the war in Ukraine, and the desire to bring about World War III before Trump comes along and destroys it.
First of all, we want to avoid the middle of the grocery store and stick to whole foods, real food. But these days, even the real food is short of its nutrient potential. And this is why it's important to take a vitamin mineral supplement every day. According to studies, regular multivitamin mineral supplement use reduces the risk of cancer and cardiovascular disease. Perhaps supplements aren't important to you, but in today's upside-down world, a daily vitamin mineral supplement is a must, and we have one of the best. Support your health and support the InfoWar. Get your vitamin mineral fusion today at InfoWarsStore.com.